Hi, I'm Allison from Move Smart and Boomerang Pilates, and today we're talking about pelvis forward, hip flexors, quads, and how those things all relate to each other. So when you bring your pelvis forward, when this is your natural standing position, which is the case for lots of people, one of the things that's happening is your thigh muscles, your quads, and your hip flexors, which fold your hip, are working all the time to stop you from falling all the way forward as you move around in your day, because the weight of your pelvis is in front of the rest of your body. And so they get tired and that overloads them and they get fatigued, but they also are in this stretched out position while they're overworking. So what can we do about that? We can do a couple of things. One is we start to work towards this more centered position for your pelvis. But when your tissues are adapted to this forward position, that's not quite as easy as it sounds like it should be. So you can play around with getting your hips back over your heels and asking the fronts of your legs and your thighs to relax. But that may not happen intuitively for you. So we have some exercises to make it easier. We're going to start with a squishy ball under one hip and thigh. So let's start with the right. You're going to pop your squishy ball under the center of your right hip and just roll a little bit up and down. So you don't need to go far. It does make noise. You can go up and down. You can do a little side to side. I like having my other knee out to the side, but that might not be comfortable for you, in which case you can bring both legs down straight. It's totally up to you. And you're just doing this nice little shifty shift, ease back and forth. I like the Gorgeous ball because I like the slight softness of it and the grippy texture of it. But if you don't have that, any other fitness ball will do. And you're going to do that on both sides. So shift over to the left. And again, you can position your right leg wherever feels most beneficial for you. That'll vary depending on your hip and knee mobility. And you're just going side to side, you're going up and down. The up and down is from maybe the very low part of your belly or your left hip bone and down halfway, maybe halfway, a third of the way down your leg. You don't need to cover the whole distance between your hip and your knee. You don't have to go that far. And that's just to get your brain a little bit connected to the muscles in the front of your hip and thigh, get a little blood flow going. You get a little movement of the fascia, the skin, the fluid that flows underneath your skin. Those are all good things to have happen. So then you can put the ball aside for a second and lean back on your hands. So one of the things that's weird about that forward standing position is that although your muscles are working, they're always working in that elongated, stretched out position. So now we're going to ask them to shorten and to work concentrically. And that's hard to do if they are in that long position for their working all the time. So see how this goes. You're going to pretend you have a big chunk of carpet tape, double-sided tape under your heel, and you're going to pretend you could lift your right leg and then let it go. But you're not actually going to come off the floor. Lift, but don't really lift. And come back down. What we're looking for is some work in the front of your thigh and the fronts of your hip flexors. Keep your whole spine and pelvis and ribs really still. We're not looking for any kind of big shifting and changing of your trunk. And then shift over and do the same thing. 5 or 6 more pretend lifts on your left. And lift, but don't really lift. Lift, but don't really lift. Couple more. And see how that feels. And then we're going to step it up a little bit. We're going to lie down, retrieve your squishy ball and put it on the floor. Try this, and if it works, that's great. If it doesn't work, you're going to go back to that as if pretending carpet tape version. Otherwise, your trunk stays super still. Engage your stomach muscles for some support. And then right from the center of your hip socket, lift, cross, and lower. So you're going over the ball. See how this feels in the lying down position. If that works, because that gives you this length through your hip flexors, which better matches your standing position. If that works for you, great, do a few of those on both sides. Or you can come up onto your elbows and lift and lower. Same thing, we're looking for the work to be here in the front of your hip. And then you can do one more, shift the ball over, and lie down again. Same thing on the other side. Pelvis super still, spine, ribs super still, lift and lower. Roll onto the ball. Come up and around. If the ball is too high, go for something smaller or don't use a thing at all and only lift as far as makes sense for you. If it doesn't work for you to lift your leg, go back to the as if lift. And lift and lower. And then come up on your forearms. Same thing. We're looking for the work, again, to be here in the front of your thighs. So we are trying to work your hip flexors. I think we get really focused on the idea of stretching our hip flexors. It's important also to work them, especially if they are acclimated to that long, overly long working pelvis forward shape. Okay, so now we are going to stretch them, but only a little bit. So come up onto your knees. You can certainly roll up your mat or grab a mat or a bolster or something softer if you want. Bring your right foot forward and then curl your pubic bones forward towards the wall in front of you. So you're doing a little scoop. For some people, that's going to make a stretch through the front of the left hip immediately, which is fine. And then do just a very small press forward of your pelvis. We're looking for a really specific isolated stretch in the front of your left hip and your left thigh. And then as you hold that position, rotate to the right. So you're reaching your left arm forward, you're reaching your right arm out to the side, and then come to center. And twist to the right. And come back to center. One more time. Twist to the right and come back to center. Come down, change over, same thing, other side. Curl, so pubic bones reaching forward. This is very similar to the position that your body is accustomed to being in, right? Your pelvis is forward, but we're making it a deliberate choice instead of a habitual pattern, and we're adding the complication of the turn. So reach your arms forward, twist to the left, right arm is reaching forward, left arm reaching back, and turn. 3 more. Last one. And then come down onto your hands and knees. Take your legs back a little bit so you're not in a 90-degree angle. Tuck your toes into the floor behind you. And really find a nice untucked butt. And then push your hips back towards the wall behind you, getting some fold into the fronts of your hips. See if you can locate the moment when your butt tucks around, because we're going to try and avoid that. We really want this sense of your sit bones, right? So the pointy bones at the bottom of your pelvis going straight back towards the wall behind you, still keeping your ribs in line with your pelvis. So there are 2 things that happen in this motion. One is your butt tucks around. The other is your butt stays up, but your ribs dump. So we're trying to find the happy in-between spot where your chest, your waist, and your pelvis are all staying in line. And you're getting some work and some awareness into the backs of your hips, and your hips at the front are folding. And you might be really limited. Because we've got these long, sort of stiff hip flexors, this is a bit like taking a licorice stick out of the fridge and trying to fold it, right? If those muscles are stiff and long, asking them to yield and fold in here, that can be tough. So you find your spot. You might only go this far, right? It might be a really small move. And you can do this for a couple of minutes, just reaching your hips back and reaching your hips forward in whatever range is making sense for you today. And then from there, tip back on your toes if you have space for that, if you have enough mobility in your toes, and then tip your feet up off the floor and stand up. And then reassess. Come back into your just standing position and see if it's any easier, it's any smoother or more natural to think about your sit bones coming straight down over your heels instead of forward over the fronts of your feet. If you're not sure whether you're a pelvis forward person, I'm including a link down to a little quick assessment video from Instagram below. You can go and check that. And I have a workshop coming up depending on when you see this video, and the link for that is also in the description below. Questions, comments, pop them in, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. See you next time.